is that we are told that the deficit, the government has been reporting that our deficit in 2017 was 3.7. In 2018 was, let me just get the right figures, was 3.9, then 4.7, and then in 2020 is going to be 4.8 or something. You can see that all these figures are below 8%. Right. And the government keeps saying that we are obeying this law. We are below the 5%. Upon close examination, right, of which, in the interest of disclosure, I wrote, articles about it.
Yes, and I have one of your articles
okay.
right here. Public debt higher than BOG's 59.3%.
Yeah.
Can't defy gravity without BOG.
Okay, yeah. So
very interesting.
So the issue the issue that came up was, wait a minute, you are saying you did 3.5% because you are leaving out the banking sector bailout costs, and you are leaving out the energy arrears. And if you were to add those, then your 3.9% becomes 7%, and your 4.7 becomes 7.5. This is what the minority leader was saying, if you heard him, right? That, and remember the figures we are mentioning now. If you add those things, it's above the 5%. So it means that this law was being breached already, and it's not just about COVID. Okay. Now again, the deficit of 4.7, projected deficit of 4.7 in 2020, at the end of, projected to be 4.7 at the end of, according to the government. If you add energy and you add bank bailout, it increases the deficit above 7%, right? So a development occurred where data that was given to the IMF confirmed that the deficit, if you add these items, are higher. Why is this important? And the argument of a minority is that when I had single spine, when I had doomsday, they may be less severe, but I added those costs in calculating my deficit. So if you are going to take them out, don't say you are doing better than me.
So your argument is that
it's a level playing field.
The calculations that are being given us are not correct. Essentially, you're saying that the government is sort of being sly, for want of a better expression, or a more politically correct expression. You're saying the government is being sly by the way it's calculating the figures to make itself look better than...
Make itself look better, precisely. And what did it do? Instead of adding the exceptional arrears, which I've mentioned, to the normal arrears, like when we owe contractors and the rest for road construction, it decided to show the second part in the footnotes, in the appendix to the budget. And it is being done still, even after pointing it out in the supplementary budget that was prepared. Right? Now the IMF and others have corrected this. What they have done is to say, yes, the deficit is 7%, but so much, 2%, 3% is bank bailout costs and energy bailout costs.
Honorable, I understand what you're saying perfectly, but and for me, this exercise is very important because it's also about education. Is there a laid out procedure for how these calculations should be done?
Yes. That's what we call the fiscal framework.
Okay.
And this fiscal framework was revised and put in place under the Economic Recovery Program and the Structural Adjustment Program. That's how far back. So we have been using that framework for nearly 40 years.
over 40 years.
Yes. So PNDC use that framework. NDC 1 use that framework. NPP 1 use that framework. NDC 2 use that framework. It is only NPP 2 which is varying the framework. Okay. And I have the data. We can go back. I have it all.
And there must be consequences. So this then is not just about not using the right formula. This goes deeper than that.
It goes deeper than that.
Is that why you're asking for this, not resignation, you're asking for the finance minister to be removed from office? Would that
that's
be
what
the
the
reason
law
why
well, according to the
minority?
Yes, that's what the law
is asking for.
And remember, this law was put in place and was seen as the fiscal discipline law, and the government was going to be disciplined, right? Which in actual fact, every provision of this law is already in the other law. Every single provision. It's just that the variations were made. And this context of deficit and fiscal responsibility was taken out to emphasize its importance. You know, in other words, the point was we don't want to bury it in a bigger law, right? Even though it's talking about the same thing and supplementing, we want to separate. So having separated it, the point of the minority is, and I'm trying to be as balanced as possible, is that, you know, the point of the minority is that you have changed the methodology. You didn't come to Parliament because under the Public Financial Management Act, if you change the methodology...
So these are two different issues. The issues are two different issues. There's the issue about the COVID-19 and the, where is it?
There's the issue about COVID-19.
The 5% of GDP. That's a different issue.
Yes.
From this issue that you are speaking about.
They are all related.
Well, all of them related in terms of a breach of the Constitution. But the issues themselves are two different issues.
Yes.
Okay.
There are two issues.
Okay.
The methodology is one issue. But remember that is also leading to the second issue.
Yes.
Whether if the deficit is 7% and you excluded the bank bailout and the energy sector costs, in 2017 it was not shown at all, and you are saying that you are below the 5%, then no, you must restore it because that's what past governments have done. And in that case, once you bring it above the line, because it shows there's a footnote, then the deficit becomes 7% or 9% or even 14, like it was 14%.
Okay.
And therefore you were in breach of the law.
Of the law. Let's listen to what the chairman of the Finance Committee of the House has to say, and that's Mr. Mark Asibe Yeboah. He rejects the NDC MP's argument, and he says that per the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Finance Minister has submitted a request to the House for the suspension of rules of the fiscal responsibility. He says a ramification of the COVID-19 pandemic. He maintains Mr. Foriata has complied with the law and there's no grounds to remove him from office. Well, the Honorable Minister Hussaini, of course, a Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, counters this position. He maintains that the minister is coming too late and that the threshold, the time for the threshold of the budget deficit of 5% has already been exceeded. But again, Mr. Asibe Yeboah insists that the fiscal year is not over.
The fiscal year is not over. But as we speak, the deficit is going to be 14%. Do we really believe that we will generate enough revenue to bring the deficit down from 9 percentage points to achieve the 5% target? The deficit, the additional increase in deficit from the borrowing that has been done and everything is already going to take the deficit to 14%, right? Does anybody believe that crude oil prices will recover? A vaccine will be found, right? Wherever borders will be opened, with 6 months to go to the end of the year, such that the minister will be obeying, the 5%.
So